Robert, I want to talk to you about 1984. Why do you think it remains so powerful a novel?
I think it's first of all, it's a very good read. And it's quite funny actually, and it's satirical, and it's got a good story. It's got various ideas that have entered the language, and it nailed totalitarianism in a way that it's no surprise that totalitarian regimes always try to ban it, because it spoke to everyone who had to live in Eastern Europe under the communist era.
And of course, written in 1948, wasn't it? Just
well, it was written. Yes, it was written before then, and it was at one point he was going to call it The Last Man in Europe, and then he inverted 1948 to 1984, it is very specifically a novel about socialism and communism. It's not really about fascism, I don't think. A point Orwell acknowledged, although he tried to sort of excuse it because it brought him a lot of attacks from the left. But it really is about the perversion and distortion of ideas and the way that power becomes an end in itself.
Looking at the hero, Winston Smith, in a way he didn't make much of an effort, did he, to create a new character? He just put himself in the book.
No, that's very important. The book has a sort of strange dream-like atmosphere to it, and this is, I think, very much to do with the fact that Orwell sadly was dying, really, as he wrote it. He was suffering from tuberculosis. He was bedridden. He was a pretty feeble physical specimen, quite bitter and angry, I think, knowing probably he wasn't going to live very long. And the character of Winston Smith is imbued with Orwell's own personality. He even looks like him. I mean, the descriptions of him having to pause on the landings when he's going back to his apartment to cough, his sallow chest and everything about him. He is Orwell, with Orwell's sense of embittered outsiderdom, I think. And he has also Orwell's obsession with old bits of old junk and fragments of musical songs and the countryside, and he has some of Orwell's misogyny as well. One of the shocking things about the book, I think, for many modern readers, is the level of misogyny. I mean, he loves Julia, but at the same time, he sort of hates women, resents them, resents their sexual hold over men.
Yes, I think there's a line in it in which he thinks of her that she's only a rebel from the waist down, that she hasn't got much of a brain.
Yeah, and that's true, and it's she's wearing the red sash of the Junior Anti-Sex League and so on, and he sort of sees her as some sort of socialist woman from a sort of one of those summer camps, who is both desirable and infinitely infuriating as well. Having said that, it's rather a touching picture, and Julia is very brave in the book.
Yes, and I was going to come on to that, because Kristen Stewart, who I think is starring in a futuristic sort of 1984, I think she was ridiculed when she said it was an epic love story. But in a way, it is a love story.
It is, and and one of the most shocking scenes, and one of the great scenes actually in 20th century literature, I think, is where the two of them are in bed together, and suddenly the words that they're uttering are repeated, and then in this they're naked, and then suddenly into the room come all these jackbooted, uniformed men to arrest them, and it's that juxtaposition of the tender, naked frailty of human relations and the power of the state. I don't think there's ever been better encapsulated in a scene than that.
Reading every day as we do about how technology can do so much and we can all spy on each other, it still has a very relevant message about how dangerous technology can be, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a book that's ahead of its time, and the power to spy into all our lives, which he thought would be state power, has in fact turned out more, I think, to be corporate power. He would have found that, I think, very interesting. You do get the sense that he understood that there will always be an other outside we individual humans that is seeking to control us. And the time he lived, it was obviously the state. And in our time, it's more obviously seems to be the system, and the sense that all our details are available. And every home really has its telly screen now, because the Skype camera in your laptop or your desktop computer, or the facility for taking pictures and videos on your phone. We now know these can be very easily turned on remotely, and we're all being spied upon. We can our movements are tracked and so on, and we may feel that this is for more benign reasons than in 1984, but who is to say to what end this may all be used?
Yes. And of course, the message of 1984 is that the state can destroy humanity, humanity in anyone. Can't it?
Yes.
It destroys Winston and it destroys her.
Yes, I mean, the message is very bleak. The most shrewd criticism of the book actually came from Evelyn Waugh, and a very unlikely friendship towards the end of Orwell's life, because he was in a sanatorium near to where Waugh lived. Waugh visited him, and Orwell gave him a copy of 1984. And Waugh wrote and said, it's a very powerful book, but you've made one mistake, in my opinion. You have underestimated the power of religious faith. There is no Christianity, there's no religious faith, there's no churches, nothing like that exists in 1984. And Waugh, writing before Solidarity and before the Catholic Pope, the Polish Pope, he put his finger on the weakness in the book. It's reductive, it's Marxist, it doesn't allow space for faith. And that is the one element that's missing from the book. I think that's a legitimate criticism of it.
Not too long ago, Will Self said that I think he described Orwell as a supreme mediocrity, tremendously overrated, and his novels are too obviously didactic, by which he meant obviously Animal Farm in 1984. Nonsense, do you think? I
think it is nonsense. He's entitled to his view, of course. What Orwell set out to do was to turn political writing into an art. What he sought to do was to take ideas and to turn them into characters and stories, and by so doing he immortalised them. One could have taken the themes of Animal Farm or 1984 and written them as a non-fiction book, but instead he brought his imagination to bear and made these ideas timeless. Orwell is about ideas, and the language is merely a means to communicate the ideas. The ideas are central. In a lot of literary fiction, the purpose is the language. It's all show on the page, and what lies behind it is often a puny little pea-like brain with a great deal of blow and show on the page. And I'm afraid that I think that Orwell, with his ideas, is likely to long outlast Will Self.